So thank you for joining this Meet the Funder session. I'm Liz Griffiths. I'm Rosa's Head of Partnerships, Philanthropy and Communications, and I'll be chairing this session. One of Rosa's main goals is to make more funding available to the women and girls sector. And we also have to fundraise for every penny we spend, so we know how important and valuable it is to know what funding is out there. And I've been a fundraiser for nearly 20 years, and I know it's tough at the moment. So we thought it would be helpful to help connect you to some of the funders who can fund your work and hear about what they're looking for. So I'd like to welcome 4 UK funders. We have Laura Rose from the Big Give, Ella Davey from Henry Smith Charity, Anna Jarvis from Rosa, and Loren Treisman from Sebba Foundation. Welcome, everyone. Each will be letting you know more about how you can apply for their funding, and you can put questions to them at the end. If you want to pop a question in the Q&A box as we go along, and if it's for a specific person, please mention that. We've turned off the chat so we can focus on the Q&A. And if you want to see the speakers' bios or links to their websites, pop to the resources button in the Zoom controls. Straight after this session, we've got individual sessions where you can meet the funders. And if you don't get your question in this session, you can ask them directly in the next. So now we'll go over to the funders and we'll kick off with Laura Rose from the Big Give. Welcome, Laura.
Thanks, Liz. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much to Rosa for having me on the panel. So I'm Laura Rose. I've been with the Big Give for 3 years now as philanthropy lead. And I've worked in fundraising for just over 20 years now across all income streams, mainly with youth charities and lastly with the King's Trust philanthropy team for 10 years. And I've also worked for a small charity with 3 staff supporting education projects in Tanzania. And my role is securing the match funding for our champion match funders at Big Give. They are the seed funders for our campaigns. So if you haven't heard of Big Give before, we are the UK's leading match funding platform. We've raised 450 million since being set up in 2007 by Sir Alec Reid, who is our founder, and he founded Reid Recruitment and also Reid Foundation, who are one of our main champion funders for our campaigns. We are a small team of 10. Our office is based in London and we also work remotely. We are trying to increase our regional funder relationships to be able to support more regional charities. And I'm based up in Newcastle, helping to fly that regional flag and working with more funders more closely in Scotland as well. We have just secured our first major regional funding gift of 2.5 million, which will turn into 10 million for North East charities through the Christmas campaign. So we're hoping that's going to be a fantastic model to replicate across the country. And we've also been working on our corporate funding and corporate foundations. And the good news is that we are close to securing a new corporate funder for our Women and Girls Match Fund this year. So that could be a really great opportunity to bring some additional funding, which, as we know, is very much needed in the sector. So the Women and Girls Match Fund is a 7-day online match funding campaign. And we're working with charities based in the UK that are either working in the UK or they may be working globally as well, serving women and girls in our communities. And as we all know, unfortunately, we are grappling as a sector across the charity sector, but in particular the women and girls sector, we've got rising challenges, funding challenges, very low percentage of philanthropy actually going into helping to tackle those challenges. So that's something that we're really passionate about helping to change. And we chose women and girls charities as one of our key focus theme campaigns, which we've been running for this our 4th year now. And we're aiming to be able to address these challenges by empowering women and girls charities to excel in digital fundraising. You do get free training as a charity to take part, and it's all about building your skills, resilience, and profile through taking part in the challenge. the Women and Girls Match Fund. And we hope that by enhancing your digital fundraising and helping to build confidence with social media and targeting audiences effectively and so on, that we're going to help drive greater support and recognition of the amazing work that's happening in the sector. It is a one-to-one model of match funding. So whatever funding you apply for, you then aim to raise online, and whatever is raised online is matched pound for pound with the funding that you have secured for your campaign. So successful charities are awarded that sum of match funding, and you are notified a good couple of months in advance of the campaign so that you can plan how you're going to generate that online funding from your donors. And that can be existing donors and networks. A lot of our charities gain a significant amount of new donors. Existing donors give more as well, tend to give more with the match funding incentive. And it is also an opportunity for you to re-engage with your lapsed donors as well, a great touch point for them. So we are relying on the generosity of the giving public for the success of these campaigns, as well as the generosity of our philanthropists, and they range from corporate philanthropy, foundations, as I've mentioned, family foundations, high net worth individuals, and we have had some public sector funding as well. It was actually the final tranche of the tampon tax fund in 2022 from DCMS that actually helped us launch our very first pilot, and we are aiming to be able to access some more government match funding to support our campaigns as well in the future. We do work with Impact 100, which you'll know, I'm sure, led by Erica, and it's all about a big give. We're all about collaboration, working with your key partners across the sectors. With the environmental fund that we work with EFN. And so, by working with our partners, they can help us to do the due diligence and the charity selection, being on our application funding panels. And it just gives that additional support to review and identify those high impact charities that are focused on supporting women and girls. Could we move on to the next slide, actually, just to talk about impact, please? So as I've touched on, we are all about building skills and resilience and profile for our charity. So this is the impact of our 2025 campaign last October. So as you can see, compared to other comparable online fundraising that charities may have done, 75% saying that they receive more donations by coming through the Women and Girls Match Fund. We know that with match giving, more people give and people give more. It is that incentive. And despite individual giving going down over the past few years, which we've seen across the sector, we've continued to be able to grow our campaigns with that incentive of the match giving in mind. So people may have less disposable income to give, may have less money to give to charity in their pockets, but they know that by giving through the Big Give, their donation will be doubled. 71% of our charities are getting bigger donations as well. Again, that match funding incentive is really powerful. Great results across the campaign, so increasing confidence in their digital fundraising. The vast majority of our charities saying that they achieved what they wanted to through the campaign, and 93% getting new supporters. As a fundraiser, I know that is the new business element, and it is always going to be the most challenging. So that's something that we really try and boost. Those kind of new donations coming through that you can then take on that journey. With new donors coming through, you have full access to contact details, and obviously if they have agreed to consent, you can then take that donor on a journey, and they may well be a pledger for a future campaign like our Christmas campaign. You can invite them to events, you can engage with them and aim to take them on that donor journey from there. And of course, it's all about strengthening existing donor relationships. where they can see that impact of their donation maximized, and they'll know that they're really contributing to that impact by helping you access that match funding. And of course, alongside the funds raised, we are aiming to be able to boost the amazing work that's done in the sector, helping in particular the small and medium-sized charities to shout about the amazing work that you're all doing. So skills, resilience and profile, we really are aiming to kind of enhance that across the sector. And then those skills that you've got and those donors that you've got, you can take them forward into the wider fantastic work that you're doing. I think that might have been more than my allotted time, but I'm happy to take questions at the appropriate time.
Well, thanks so much, Laura. That was great and really great to hear about the potential impact of the fund on organisations. Now we're going to go over to Ella Davey at Henry Smith Foundation. Welcome, Ella.
Hi, so I'm Ella. I'm from the Henry Smith Foundation and I lead on our work within the domestic abuse sector. You may know that Henry Smith funds quite a lot of different sectors, and we fund across the UK on a range of different social issues, but I'm going to talk about a fund that we're currently in the process of developing. So this is a sneak preview. It's not on our website yet. It's going to be launched in mid-September and we will have our own webinar about it, but this is just to give you insight into what we're currently developing within the domestic abuse space. This also means that bits of the criteria might change slightly, but I will flag those with you. So if I can't answer some of your questions later on, that's why, but I will try to do as best I can. So what is definite is that this is a fund for specialist domestic abuse organisations who are providing long-term trauma-informed counselling. The grants will be for 5 years and this will be flexible funding. So you could have it as unrestricted, running costs or project, depending on what you'd like. I say that, but unrestricted is only available to charities. Unfortunately, we can't give unrestricted to CICs or other types of organisations. So whilst we will fund them, we can only give running costs or project costs for those. The grants will be 250k for those 5 years. So that's 50 grand per year. As I said, we fund any organisation that have charitable aims. So you don't need to be a charity. You can be a CSC, a community benefit society. If you're not sure whether we'll fund you, just get in contact and I'm more than happy to look into it for you. We also don't have a lower level income limit. So whatever your size, as long as you're below 2 million income turnover, we will accept applications. We have experience assessing a lot of different organisations, so we do take into consideration kind of the different capacities, different resources of those smaller organisations applying. In terms of other eligibility, you do have to be a specialist domestic abuse organisation, and by this we mean supporting survivors and victims of domestic abuse is your primary purpose. You've got a deep understanding of what abuse is, what the impact is, and your staff are specifically trained in this area. You also need to currently be providing long-term counselling services. The long-term definition, that's something we're currently working out at the moment. So it's likely to be anything which is 12 sessions or more, but that's one which I will have to get back to people on. And also we do require that, yes, this is something you've delivered before, so you've got that track record. So unfortunately, we don't fund new organisations and we don't fund pilot projects. So you do have to have at least a year's worth of accounts published with Charity Commission or Companies House. The other main kind of eligibility criteria that we have is that your organisation and your work has to be based in the UK. So we don't fund overseas, but that could be anywhere within the UK, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales. In terms of the services that you provide, in addition to it being long-term counselling, what we really want to see is that this work is person-centred. So this means that you've got to be providing one-to-one counselling services. You can do group work, but it's got to be in addition to those one-to-one provisions. We also want to see that your organisation is providing holistic support. So we want to see that you recognise individuals have diverse needs and you support them to provide that wraparound support. This doesn't mean that your organisation yourself has to be providing that support, but you'll have really close referral pathways, you'll do warm handovers, you'll make sure that those needs are being met. And lastly, we are looking for that work to be trauma informed. So we really want you to be able to demonstrate that you understand the widespread impact of trauma, how it relates to recovery, and that this knowledge is embedded throughout your organisation and that you're actively trying to prevent re-traumatisation. As I said, this fund isn't online yet, so you won't be able to find it on our website. It will come up in September, and we will have it in our newsletter, and there'll be a webinar that you'll be able to sign for. So at the moment, I recommend signing up to the newsletter, but also I'll put my email address in the chat and people can get in contact with me prior to this. The webinar, I do know at the moment, is going to be on the 15th of September. So if you put that in your diary, you can come to that. What I will say is the webinar doesn't have information that won't be available on the website and our guidelines. So it isn't going to be you learn tips and tricks that isn't available. Everything that we say in the webinar is everything that's available on the website. And then just quickly, it is a two-stage application process. This is so that the first stage of the application is a expression of interest. So it's one question that we ask you to fill in. Typically, it takes about 1 to 3 hours. And then we invite people after that to a second stage application. This means that hopefully you don't spend too much time on an application if you aren't then going to make it to the next stage. So kind of the decline rate is high at that first stage, but it does mean that hopefully you aren't dragged through a long process where you aren't going to be successful at the end. We do offer accessibility support as well for organisations who need help applying for that expression of interest stage. That's £250. And if that's something you wanted to access, just get in touch and we can look into it for you. Yes, and lastly, if you've got any questions, get in touch. I didn't name the programme just because it doesn't actually have a name yet. At the moment, I'm calling it domestic abuse counselling, but it will likely change. But it will be the only domestic abuse fund we have available at that time. Previously, we had a Led by and for fund. We will be running that one again, but that will not be this year. It will be next year. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Ella. And really exciting to hear about new funding coming up through Henry Smith. Really appreciate it. So now it's over to Anna Jarvis from Rosa. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Liz. I'm Anna Jarvis, Head of Grants at Rosa, and I'm going to start by telling you a bit about Rosa. I'm conscious that many of you in the audience will know us well already, but some of you will be new to us. So Rosa was set up in 2008 and is primarily a grant maker, which exists to fund the women and girls sector across the UK. We want the UK to be a safer, fairer place for women and girls, and we have 3 areas of work. So the part of our work that you're particularly interested in on this panel is that we fund. So we want to fund a thriving sector. Now, as Liz mentioned at the start of the session, we're a fundraising grant maker. So what that means is we have to fundraise every penny that we give out to women and girls organisations. So we distribute approximately £1 million a year. We also, as our second area of work, aim to build a resilient sector. So that we do that through a few different strands of activity, through conducting and sharing research to improve the understanding of the sector's challenges and impact. We also deliver training and networking opportunities such as today's conference and also tomorrow's training day that we would really welcome you to come to. And thirdly, we want to inspire others to invest more in the sector. So we can't meet the needs of the women and girls sector on our own. So we work with other trusts and foundations and philanthropists to increase the overall amount of funding going to the sector, because that's really what we're interested in. I hope it's really evident throughout this conference that at Rosa, we fiercely believe in the value of the UK women and girls sector. Our Mapping the Sector research shows that there are over 7,000 women and girls charities working in the UK and many other organisations that aren't necessarily registered as charities, providing life-saving frontline services as well as campaigning and advocating for women and girls' rights. We're really proud of our relationship with women's and girls' organisations. We design all of our grants programmes with input from the sector. And once we've assessed applications, we ask our grants panels, which are made up of experts from women and girls organisations, to decide which applications to recommend for funding. I'm now going to tell you a little bit about our funding and how you may be able to access it. So the first thing you need to know about Rosa is that we will only fund women's and girls' organisations. Now, here are some of the things that we look at to establish whether your organisation meets our definition of a not-for-profit women and girls organisation. So we'll look to see if the principal objective of your organisation is to work with women and girls. We'll ask if the majority of your organisation's clients, beneficiaries or service users are women and girls. And we'll look to see whether your organisation has a leadership team where the majority are women. I'm not going to go through all of our eligibility criteria now. They're all clearly listed on our website. But importantly, and I know a few people have asked about this, we fund charities, we fund community interest companies, and we also fund community groups, which are neither charities nor companies. In order to access our funding, you do need to be not-for-profit, you need to have a governing document, and you need to have a bank account in the name of your organisation. You don't need to be registered. This year, we have 2 grants programmes running. Now, the one that's running at the moment is called Stand With Us, so you can find information out about that on our website. It's open for applications at the moment, but the deadline is next week on the 22nd of June. It offers grants of up to $28,000 to violence against women and girls organisations whose primary purpose is the delivery of frontline services. The grants are for organisational strengthening rather than service delivery. So please do go and have a look and see if you're eligible. As I say, the deadline is the 22nd of June. And if you want to ask more about that fund, do come along to our Q&A session that we're running after this panel. And then in the autumn, we will be launching our next round of Voices from the Frontline, which is a programme that we've run several times before. It funds campaigning and influencing work and distributes grants of up to £10,000. There are no income caps linked to that fund. It doesn't matter what your income is as an organisation. You're very welcome to apply. So we'll launch that in the autumn. At Rosa, we know how precious your time is, so we only ever ask you for information that we really need. Our application forms are straightforward. And alongside the financial support of the grant, we also offer you training opportunities, largely delivered by women who have worked within the sector. I'm conscious that you are all taking in a lot of information today. So if you only take 3 things away from what I've said today, my key messages for you are that it's worth finding out if your organisation meets Rosa's definition of a women and girls organisation before you apply. Please do sign up to our newsletter to find out when we launch funds. That's always how we let the sector know that our funding is available. And do take a look at Stand With Us and find out if it will be right for your organisation. And the deadline is the 22nd of June. Thank you very much. And I will see some of you in the Q&A session afterwards.
Lovely. Thanks, Anna. That was really helpful. And now we'll move on to our last speaker, Loren Treisman from Sebba Foundation. Welcome, Loren.
Hi everyone, my name's Loren and I am the CEO of the Sam and Bella Sebba Charitable Foundation. I'm just going to switch on my screen share. Our mission is to create a more humane society by promoting social justice and protecting human rights. We work in the UK, predominantly in the migration and VOG sectors, and in Israel across a wide range of issues, which includes human rights, predominantly Palestinian rights, shared society, and a range of social justice issues, which includes VOG. In the VOG sector, we've got a few key focuses. One is in ensuring that people have access to legal advice and representation. This includes pro bono models like DARA and also low-cost models like Affordable Justice. We also support marginalised and underrepresented groups. This includes Black and racially minoritized communities, the LGBTQI community and disabilities. So some examples of this are Welsh Women's Aid, who are looking at a programme to support deaf victims and survivors, and Divas Project, which supports survivors and victims who have either learning disabilities or neurodiversity. We've also got a wide prevention portfolio, which includes everything from awareness raising initiatives in schools, for example, alongside programmes working to support men and boys as allies, like Beyond Equality, for example, and perpetrator programmes. We also have a large portfolio that is supporting work in family courts, and we're doing this in collaboration with a group of funders, which includes Ella Davey on this panel from Henry Smith, and we're looking to support systemic change within that sector. Oh, doesn't seem to want to go on to my next slide. Let's see if I can go like this and share it. One moment. Okay, let's see if that will share the screen again. We're back, I think. There we go. So we are, it's worth highlighting that we don't, oh, it doesn't seem to want to go to the next slide. There we go. So it's worth mentioning that we don't accept unsolicited proposals, but we are always open to hearing from you, and I'll talk about why we're like that, perhaps on the panel. So what we do, we consider ourselves transformative grant makers, and what this means in practice is that we don't traditionally support frontline services unless they fit into one of these categories below. So one of the things we do is provide seed funding for small new organisations that are addressing an unmet or under-addressed need. An example of this might be something like Justice Is Now, which is dispelling rape myths in court, or Loving Me, which is the first organisation that's supporting only trans and non-binary victim survivors. We also pilot testing new ideas which have the potential to shift the dial and scale and replicate. So examples of this might be working with the Sex Education Forum. They are piloting a programme to support foster carers and adoptive parents to speak to the young people that they support about sex, healthy relationships, etc. And we've also got quite a large influencing portfolio. So groups like Right to Equality, whose biggest win recently was the government's commitment to remove the presumption of contact in family courts, and Project Resist, which does advocacy work for Black and minoritised communities. We provide core and multi-year funding. We are open to project funding too, but we are very open to unrestricted funding. Our grants are normally between about 40 to 60k a year. We have a preference for small organisations, particularly for core funding. We will support larger organisations for specific projects. And we try and look at organisations which are working in areas which are harder to fund or that others ordinarily support less. And we do try and spread right across the UK and avoid being too London-centric. We really try and work on issues that have the potential to shift the dial or really change something at a systemic or at least a community level. We're very open to taking risks and testing new ideas, and we do provide additional support to our grantees. This can include things like training, networking opportunities, roundtables, bringing them together with sector experts and policymakers, and occasionally consultancy. We'd really love to hear from you, and thanks very much for listening.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Loren. That was really helpful. And thanks to all the other speakers. Now we can move on to questions. So I know some of you have been busy popping questions in the Q&A section on screen, and I'm just going to choose a couple to put to the panelists. So one question to all panelists: what is the smallest size of organisation that you fund, and how long do you need organisations to have been established for? Would anybody like to take that?
I'm happy to take that one. At Rosa, we need organisations to have a year's worth of accounts. So that's our kind of the shortest amount of time you can have been around for. And we don't, we have different income levels for different funds. So it's always worth checking the criteria for each fund that we run. But our Voices programme, which we're launching in the autumn, you can be an organisation of any size. If you've never had any money, we might kind of think about whether this is the right time for you to run a campaign. But really, there's kind of no income threshold to that fund. I think Ella was going to answer as well.
Yeah, I was going to say we're quite similar. So for this domestic abuse fund, you do need to have also a year's worth of published accounts, and there will be a criteria that you have a track record of minimum 2 years of providing the counselling service. That again is one of those criteria that we haven't quite finalised. It could get higher, but at the moment you definitely need to have track record. There is no lower income limit, but the threshold for higher organisations is 2 million, and that's according to your last set of published accounts. So if your income fluctuates around, we will be basing it on what was last on Charity Commission or Companies House, and we do stick to that rule. If you aren't sure, just get in touch. What I will add is we have multiple funds, and this was just the domestic abuse fund. These criteria do change depending on which fund. Some of them do accept pilot projects or new organisations, so it's worth always checking on the specific fund and getting in touch if you're not sure.
I'm happy to take this one as well, if you like.
Thanks, yeah.
So as I mentioned in my presentation, we do provide seed funding to brand new organisations. So sometimes we are the very first funder for an organisation. We would need to see some sort of track record. So it might be something like, for example, we funded Project Resist. I think we were pretty much their first funder, but their founders very much had shown, one of them, for example, had been the CEO of Southall Black Sisters. So we knew that they had a reputation already, or we'd need to see, for example, that a project had been running or that something had started, but we really are very early stage funders. So that does mean you can have virtually no income and be really tiny. I think someone asked what we considered a small organisation, and it really could be from zero. But we do tend to fund up to roughly 1 million, which is less small.
Fantastic. Thank you, Loren. Laura, would you like to take this question?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Liz. So you must be a UK registered charity with Charity Commission, Scottish Charity Commission, or Northern Ireland Charity Commission. You must have an income of at least £5,000 for this campaign, and at least 1 year's filed accounts, or 1 year's recorded income with the Charity Commission. And you can apply for between £500 and £10,000 for this. But in terms of that champion funding you're applying for, it can only be a maximum of 10% of your annual income as well. It's all on the website here at Big Give Women and Girls Match Fund. So this is kind of different criteria to the Christmas challenge. I should have mentioned as well with the slides, applications are still open at the moment for this fund. But the applications are closing on the 24th of June. So just over a week left to apply. Again, it's a very straightforward application process. Probably about an hour and a half, based on me doing it a few years ago on the other side of the fence at the King's Trust. But yeah, really straightforward application. So I would encourage you to have a go and consider it, because it can be a great source of unrestricted funding. You can you restrict it to a project. Applying doesn't guarantee your place in the campaign, but we are still approaching funders thick and fast here to try and get as much money in as possible, as much champion funding as possible. So yeah, if you're considering it, good luck and give it a go.
Thanks, Laura. And it's always really helpful to get a sense of how long these applications take, isn't it? So thanks for sharing that. So we've got another question for everybody. So what type of organisations will you fund? I know everybody's touched on this, but it might be helpful just to revisit it. So the person asking the question has asked, is it charities, CICs, not-for-profits? So who would like to take this question?
I'm happy to go with it if you want. Oh, sorry,
Lauren, you go
first. I'll keep it very short. So essentially, we are open to any not-for-profit. We even sometimes fund for-profit organisations for charitable purposes, if there's an element to that, but predominantly not-for-profits. You don't have to be a registered charity. You can be a CIC or social enterprise, etc.
Thanks, Lauren. Ella, would you like to go next?
Also the same, we all fund not-for-profits as long as you've got charitable aims, and that's got to be really clear in your governing documents. Yes, and that also means that you do have to be constituted. But so includes CICs, yeah, charities.
Okay. Thank you. And Anna, would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, same, charities and CICs, and you don't need to be registered. So it's really clearly set out in the guidance.
Okay, thanks. And Laura?
Big Give will only fund UK registered charities. Unfortunately, we don't fund CICs.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. So the next question that's come up again to everybody, what is demand like for your programmes, and are you seeing any trends at the moment? That's an interesting one.
Happy to go first. So at Rosa, we only run a couple of programmes a year, and we try very hard to develop criteria that means when we don't receive far more applications than we're able to fund. We know as an applicant, it's extremely frustrating if you apply for a programme and then you realise you were one of 2,000 other people that applied for the grant and that only 4 grants are able to be given out. So quite often you'll see in our criteria that we do have income threshold, for example, where we're only able to fund organisations between, for example, 100,000 and 500,000. The reason we've done that is because we've done some analysis of which organisations might be able to apply, and we've worked out that we'll be able to fund, we won't be attracting hundreds of applications that we're then unable to fund. So I would say demand is very high, but actually we're kind of working with you to make sure that we don't receive far more applications than we can fund. But certainly what we're hearing from the organisations that we support is that the success rates are going down as they're applying to funding, which I'm sure is the experience of lots of people in the audience.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Would anybody else like to take this question?
I'm happy to share. Sorry, Ella, do you want? Sorry.
You go, Laura.
So across all of our Big Give campaigns, we are always oversubscribed with more and more charities applying every year. That said, we have been growing our champion income between 30 and 40% the last few years, year on year. So for an example, for the Christmas campaign in December 25, we funded around, I think it was around 84% of charities that applied were able to take part in the Christmas challenge. But not every charity that applied got the full amount that they applied for. So we had to kind of spread it more thinly, but we wanted to give as many charities the opportunity to take part. So that has also been the case previously for for Women and Girls and for our arts campaign, the theme campaigns, where we spread it as far and wide as we can, but it may mean that you don't get the full amount that you applied for.
Thanks, Laura. Ella, would you like to answer this question?
Yes, I was going to say we definitely have seen an increase in oversubscription, and that's part of the reason why Henry Smith Foundation, our strategy has narrowed. It was to kind of make it so it was less competitive. We do find at the expression of interest stage, we get a lot of applications, and sometimes the success rate at that point is 10%. But if you get to the second stage, you're looking at 75 to 80%. So we've taken that two-stage approach to try and reduce the burden. What I will say is if you aren't sure, get in touch and double check before even bothering rallying. I'm more than happy to walk you through and have that conversation. And I think we've also noticed a big change in oversubscription with AI, and that's been quite noticeable for us. I don't know about other funders.
Yeah, thanks, Ella. And Loren, I imagine it's a slightly different situation.
Yes.
Sebba.
So as I mentioned before, we don't take unsolicited proposals, and it's worth mentioning that formerly I was CEO of the Indigo Trust, which is one of the Sainsbury family charitable foundations, and the reason that we made this decision there was that we were actually receiving hundreds of proposals and then realised that the majority of people that we funded, we had been recommended through another route. And so we wanted to stop wasting organisations' time. And the Sebba Foundation takes a similar approach. But I just want you to know that that doesn't mean you can't get in touch with us. You're welcome to get in touch. Let us know a bit more about your work. I think sometimes people think that unsolicited proposals are a kind of closed door, and that's not the case. We can very much, you can send a sort of one pager and we can let you know whether you're likely to be eligible or not, for example, and set up a conversation if you are. There's definitely increased demand. I think you all know that. We're in quite a lucky situation that we've upped our budget from 3.5 million a couple of years ago. We're going to be at 5 million next year, although it's worth pointing out that only about 1.25 million is in the Vogue sector in the UK in terms of that. But that has helped, but there definitely is an increased demand, which I think you all know.
Yeah, thanks, Loren. It's really helpful to hear the perspective from an organisation that doesn't take unsolicited applications as well. So thank you for that. And I think we've probably got time for one more question to everybody again. And this is asking for a top tip. So writing bids can be a daunting process. If you had one top tip for anyone writing grant applications, what would it be? Does anybody have a top tip for us? Ella, would you like to take this one?
I know all funders are different, but for me, I really would just pick up the phone, give us a call, or book in a meeting with us. And I think that's my biggest top tip. Also, use AI as a tool. Don't use it to write your application. I definitely found when I was assessing last year that there were some amazing organizations and they used AI and it just made the application really, really generic and it did them a disservice. So actually just naturally talking about your organization and what you put in your annual impact report, that's a great way to talk about your organization. But yeah, my top tip is always get in touch.
Thanks, Ella. And I noticed you put your email address in the chat earlier. Would you like to give that to us verbally now so people can get in touch?
Yeah, of course. So it's quite simple. It's just ella@henrysmith.foundation.
Lovely stuff. Thanks, Ella. Does anybody else have a top tip for our audience on your grant applications?
I have a top tip. I have a little tip to share. So we provide a range of resources, including seminars for charities and thinking of applying for campaigns or those that have been successful, and they're all recorded and they're all on YouTube. So I'd really recommend watching those videos so that you can get an idea of how the campaign works and see if it's going to be the right timing for you and how it might work. So because part of your application for the campaigns across all of our campaigns is, what is your plan to raise the online amount, what's your experience of that kind of fundraising. So definitely get some tips from there to help support your application. I have mentioned in the chat, but in terms of specific questions on your application, my colleagues are ready to help, and they are, as in the chat, hello@biggive.org, and they work with our charity relationships, our charity partners, and they're really responsive and fantastic team, so they'll be able to help you and guide you along the way.
Thanks, Laura. That's really helpful. Anna, I noticed you were ready to speak as well. What would you like to say as your top tip?
I would say be really clear in yourselves about what your organisation is brilliant at. Because once you've worked that out, you can communicate it in all sorts of different ways. And an observation from working with the women and girls sector is that the sector is brilliant at talking about the services it provides to women and girls and how it helps individual women and girls. But what often gets missed is how the organisation actually how the sector changes the society we live in, and that can be in all sorts of different ways. So women and girls organisations do so much influencing at local level, with kind of local councillors, with all sorts of different services, sometimes even at national level, but often aren't able to talk about that. So be really clear what you're brilliant at and all the different things you're brilliant at, and then work out how to communicate it.
Thanks, Anna. That was a great tip. Thank you. And Loren, would you like to add anything?
Sure. I mean, one thing I'd say is to be succinct. We sometimes get 50-page proposals and 5-page proposals, and usually the 5-page ones are better. And I would say really get to know the funder, check out learn what their objectives are, and make sure that your proposal aligns with their objectives. I think what Ella and Laura said as well, do feel free to get in touch because we are very open to working with people on their proposals. So you're always welcome to say, we've got these 2 ideas. What would you be more interested in? Or these could be the outcomes we're working with. And anything you can do to kind of highlight systemic change and your unique selling point is really useful as well.
Thanks, Loren. And how is it best for people to get in touch with you?
You can get in touch at loren@sebbafoundation.org. There's further details on the website of the other members of our team as well.
Lovely stuff, thanks. And I didn't ask you, Anna, if you wanted to share the best email address for people to use to get in touch.
Yeah, sure. It's grants@rosauk.org. And can I also do a little plug? Tomorrow we're running some training on how to develop a theory of change, and that is a really good way of working out what you're brilliant at. So that's at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Great plug. Thanks, Anna. So I'm afraid we've run out of time now. So I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you to